In the summer of 1967, I volunteered to collect data for the Neighborhood Youth Corps' employment program offered specifically for black youth in downtown Memphis, Tennessee, in the Orange Mound district. Orange Mound was a subdivision built at the turn of the century on a 5,000-acre plantation owned by John George Diedrich. The old historic marker noted that it was named for the row of mock orange shrubs that lined the side yard of the Diedrich plantation. But the presence of an imposing early Indian mound at the entrance of the area would give reason for another very different meaning of that name. The, quote, Negro subdivision, unquote, mostly composed of small single-family houses, had been devastated by poverty, bad public housing built along the neighborhood boundaries, a lack of jobs, and easy acquisition of drugs and alcohol. Pawn shops, shabby bars, and doorless schools with broken windows lined the streets nearest the neighborhood. The original houses were often filled with multiple children from an assortment of relationships under the guardianship of equally diverse relationships. The reward for me would be extra credit in a social studies class at Memphis State University. The assignment was an overt departure from my comfort zone. I'd grown up in a white post-World War II suburb of working-class families primed for prejudice and irrational fear, but I also grew up in a generation seeking change. My experience and ultimately my reward was life-changing. I picked up an armful of questionnaires designed for teenagers who had expressed interest in summer jobs. The Youth Corps office sent me out the door to meet a fellow graduate partner, and we were advised to travel in pairs and to report any problems. There were no cell phones, and we were expected to use our own cars for transportation. My partner never appeared. When I realized she was not coming, then or ever, I made a decision. I would go alone. I chose not to listen to the voice in my head that shouted rules that recalled stories from the inside boundaries of Orange Mound that incited fear, but I was afraid. I took a deep breath, pulled out the map, and began winding my way through neighborhoods of broken glass, trashed lawns, collapsed outbuildings, and unpainted houses, here and there a small house with Chinese lettering on a painted mailbox. My first introduction to a prejudice that drove Asian shopkeepers into black neighborhoods where they defended themselves from the hatred of two cultures. I found the first address and parked my car at the base of a small hill. The single-window shotgun house was unpainted but tidy. My hands were shaking and my knees barely held me as I gathered clipboard, addresses, and surveys. I looked up and saw an elderly black man standing at the door. My legs were visibly shaking. The man moved back inside a little and pulled a ladder-back chair from a wall and set it immediately inside the door. "Sit down," he said with a smile. He asked me to take as much time as I needed to pull myself together while he went in back. He said he would come back in a bit. He did. I smiled back this time, and he pulled another ladder-back chair a little closer across from me and told me to ask my questions. His voice was soft and deep like music. He offered some water, always welcome on a Memphis summer day, and I felt all the stuff that terrified me leave. For the rest of that summer, I visited at least 50 houses and found myself having to give back a little in order to receive the information I needed. I ironed children's blouses in one house while the mother asked questions and completed the survey. I ran interference between a mom and her teenage daughter who had no intention of working until she realized she had a few choices on the kind of job she would have. Her mom had signed her up. Her boyfriend nodded, a final authority in her decision to say yes. I braided young girls' hair while another mother completed forms for multiple teenage children. The heavy lard-like pomade covered my hands and stuck to the pages. I stopped at a corner store and bought paper towels. I went shopping for another family, and I was often invited to have a sandwich or biscuits and gravy, occasionally a side of ham, and always sweet tea. Saying no would have been rude, and the stories came house after house. I began to ask more questions. How long had their families lived in Orange Mound? Where had they been born? Did they see a future that was better or even different? Did they have dreams? Then the last day came. I'd become overconfident in my ability to be safe in Orange Mound, and I'd never told anyone that my partner had never showed up. There was one more house on the list, but this time the neighborhood was different. There were no complete dwellings. The road was dirt with tall, spiky grass growing between the ruts. Old mattresses littered the yards, and the stench of urine and sewage and rotting food was overwhelming as I drove carefully down the dead-end street. The address was nailed on a board in the yard of a shelter composed of lean-to metal sheets, and inside was a dirt floor that smelled of urine with a step-height rise of packed dirt used for sitting. No furniture, a stove in the corner, some dirty food crumbs and dead rats on the floor. The woman was plump and pleasant. She ordered all the children to come closer as she nursed the smallest one. The children stood in an arch around me, some tugging at tattered dresses or shoving their hands into pockets of pants either too big or too small for them. None of them spoke. She sifted the nursing child and looked at each child individually as she called out their names. There were at least 15 of them. Each had a different last name, and she told me the story of each of their fathers, none of whom were part of her life or theirs. I was again drawn into the stories and asked more questions. She matter-of-factly shared her stories of seduction, drugs, alcohol, and feelings of passion that wreaked havoc with her life and with her children's lives. Then she stood up and brushed her hands over her dress, brushing away the past like so many crumbs. The interview was over, and I walked out the door, looking down, gathering my papers, walking the few feet toward my car when I heard the heavy slam of the makeshift metal door behind me. Startled, I looked up. Between the door, now closed, and my car were maybe 5 or 6 teenage boys, one standing near the door, one sitting on the hood of the car, and one on the roof, alternately throwing knives on the dirt road, picking them up and retaking their place on the hood or roof. The rest hovered around the edges of the road. I had nowhere to go. I could not turn back. I was on a dead-end street. I would not be afraid, I told myself. Calm took over my head and my body. This time my legs were steady. I walked slowly to the car, staring straight at the young men. I moved around one and slowly opened my car door and slowly got in. I rolled up the window and locked the door, slowly. I started the car, backed up, turned, and slowly drove down the dirt road. One by one, the boys slid off the car and walked away. Blocks away, as I rounded the old Indian mound, I took my first breath. Less than a year later, Martin Luther King would be shot and killed just on the edge of Orange Mound, just on the edge of change. Orange Mound, summer 1967. Come here inside, you. You walked down our street alone and dared to cross a boundary, and then you stopped just outside the threshold, just outside a new experience. Come inside, you, and sit in that old chair over there beside the door, just across the threshold, and feel and smell and sense who we really are. My eyes have little sight, so I can't judge your color. Come inside, you, and sit a spell, and you can't judge mine. Comb my children's thick hair and make a braid heavy with pomade. Call their names and have a biscuit with cold ham. Sit in this chair, you, until your knees no longer shake. Then you will be invited, you, to sit and talk, to know who we really are, to not be afraid. Come inside, you. Come inside and close the door behind you. Thank you.